Right, here goes. Hello everyone. Been asked to do a video on the ptg2r by LC Racing. I'm going to make it as quick as possible. What have we got? So I'm going to go off subject, so hi, and start with this. So we started with rally. This how it all began for us, was we started the rally on grass. So we needed a car that would handle the terrain and not keep rolling over. So what we went for was a 6S Centon, that's the 6S Centon. Yep. Have it a little show you around it. That's the Peugeot T16 205. So that was a Centon. It's the metal chassis one. You can convert the plastic ones, but this has got carbon fibre now by CRCU. And basically, so we were running on grass. We had to go for the bigger cars initially because we didn't have the surface to run 110. So that's what we went for. So bear in mind the weight. The metal chassis was a low centre of gravity weight, so we found the cars could go sideways faster. So the metal chassis was good, and they're 8 scale. So there's the Subaru. They're a bit rough now. Oops, look at this. There you go. That's the Armour Typhon, but you could convert any 8th buggy or 10th short course with an 8th rally body. Model Sport can get them in from Italy. Delta Plastics do them. Just let's straighten that up a bit. Right then, moving on to the 10th. So as we started doing the 10th rally, there was talks about, wouldn't it be great if we had a metal chassis 10th scale, so we got that low centre of gravity weight again. Well, we talked about it, couldn't find, there was metal chassis out there. But we spoke about it, we found some on AliExpress or Banggood or whatever, metal chassis. You'd obviously got to get these chassis in. You'd have to order a car in and then see what it was like. Then you got the parts and this, that and the other, availability and getting hold of them and the weight and this, that and the other. But there was also talks of, it'd be good to have a centre diff. So this is where we're heading to the ptg2r with the centre diff. Basically, what I had was a WR8 on the shelf. So we're going over, excuse all the different cars. There's a HPI WR8. Right, there's the chassis. And on the shelf below it, which I haven't got for example because it's in the other room, was a HPR S4. Now, what I'd done was, bear in mind this is the WR8, it's got a centre diff, it's got the thick metal chassis. So basically this is a cut down chassis. There it is, you can see what I've done is I done some measurements, and because I had them both on the shelf, figured out that if you move the gearbox forwards to the front holes, you could chop all that off the back. You've got 1 bolt hole there already, but it doesn't quite fall in the right place. So you've got 2 in the right place. As you can see, that slots there is, well, this hole here is that hole. See? So what you're left with, the funny thing is, see these two holes here, they're already on the original chassis. and they're already on the original chassis, but you have to drill this extra hole, and you have to obviously drill these, and the bigger one at the back, and another little one, which was that one at the front. So you're drilling 2 extra square holes, an extra hole here, moving this one slightly, and you've got another hole. See, this is the tower brace and location hole. Well, when you move that gearbox forwards to there, the tower brace then drops into them two, but you have to drill a locating hole. Now, the arms on this are bigger front to back than RS4 ones, and what that left you with, I'll show you in a sec, was this got made before the ptg2r was out with the metal chassis, but I believe before it come out. So this is a 3mm chassis as well. So what I've done was, I've done this, the gearbox has come forward, these arms come off because it made it too wide to be 10th. I think you could just about get it to 200mm with the 0 offset buggy rims, which weren't ideal. And with these arms also, it was fractionally too long. Well, when you put the RS4 arms on it, you end up with a 9mm gap on these hinge pins, so you could move the arms wherever you liked. So there was a 9mm gap on the front ones, and there was a 7mm gap, 9mm gap on the rear ones, and a 7 on the front. So I found by moving them, it gave you the 257 by 195 adjustable length and width. So it was perfect. So what it gave you was, just chuck them out of the way. Now I've taken that off because I'm now running the WR, I've called it the WR10. I'm running it in a different class where I can't run a metal chassis. So I'm now running it with a carbon chassis I made. Good friend lacquered this side of the carbon for me, because this side was just raw carbon, if you like. So it was only finished one side, and on the other side, oh hang on, I could have shown you the actual bit. It was like that. So he sanded it and lacquered it with some Mercedes lacquer, and that carbon, that square bit, is what this come out of. So this is the WR8 with a remade 10th scale size carbon chassis, which is obviously the equivalent of the metal one that I reduced but slightly reshaped, because I've left these tabs on all the way back so that when you adjust the wheelbase, you've still got the droop screws can be used. I have got to do some fine adjustments on it. I've filed this off at an angle here for the arms, but they're not quite filed off enough. So these are the RS4 arms. So you're using the arms, the hubs and the turnbuckles and the drive shafts of the RS4. The WR8 anti-roll bars still bolt on, WR8 shocks still bolt on. There is a few little mods you need to do on the WR8 shocks. So that gave us our metal chassis monster, if you like. And as that arrived, out come the ptg2. So right, we're on the subject where a few people asked me to do a video on how it's built. I'm going to try and pronounce his name right. I believe it's Erwin Louis on the RC Racing pages. He was the first person I see to do this. He does have the information. I've got photos that he sent me. Obviously, I got one of these, and there's one thing I weren't too keen on. was the fact that, I don't know, there's two slightly different ones which have different motor mounts. Now what I found was the motor mount allowed you to go between a 24 tooth pinion maximum with the dust cover that covered the pinion and spur. You could go between a 24 and a 21, which meant the thing was like a bloody, it was like a missile, you know. It was really loads of top end. So anyway, you have to excuse it. It's not a really clean, fine example like you see in these videos. It's a used car. Love the dust cover. That was brilliant that they done that. It was, you see it turn up on the XV02, the dust cover that fitted nicely like that afterwards. This is all sort of crammed in there as well, guys. So it's not necessarily going to be easy to see. The battery tray, this hole's already in the chassis, and you order these, the temp scale buggy by LC Racing Bits. I believe this hole here, that was a re-drilled hole. You can see them all because I've countersunk them. See the shiny bit around the edge? That was slightly moved from an original. There's one there for the motor. What was that for? That's the battery tray holder again. Yeah, so all these bits, you've got the buggy CVD centre shafts, that's full length. So, I mean, I'll have to find a photo of the parts and add it to the video. You'll get it in this plastic part, that carbon part, the same setup on the front buried under there. This top bit of carbon I cut myself. This bit is a part that comes with the motor mount, so you're using the buggy motor mount. You've ended up with the motor there. This is open, but I have found what I had to do with this centre diff brace and motor mount is I've put some little washers under it, so this gear actually clears the chassis. I could have filed a ditch in the chassis or had a hole right through, which is what a lot of them seem to do. Did they do it on the WR10? No, they didn't do it on the WR8. That doesn't have the cover, the hole. But if you look at any of these, any of the bigger cars seem to have a hole at the spur. I didn't want to do that. I don't know why, but that's how it ended up. But to try and show you, so you've ended up with this T-shaped bit at the bottom. Now, when I first see the diagrams of how it had been done, there was holes in this bar that I thought would line up with the existing ones in the chassis, but they don't. So I was a bit disappointed. There's two holes at the back in the bar that I thought would line up with these. They don't, so I was a bit disappointed about that as well. But what it is giving you, it's giving you a nice tidy bracket with a carbon sort of strengthener on top that you can brace the chassis with. Now, I know they do run several different configurations when they've tested them. They've run them without a top brace, so it had more flex. You've obviously got this bar here is at the front underneath all this lot as well. But I wanted to run a carbon top brace, so I made one up. A lot of it is pretty straightforward. It seems quite daunting to start with. But you just got to think about, right, that bar's got to go in there to strengthen up the chassis. I wouldn't worry about bolting it to the gearbox, because it's so close to the gearbox, you just literally have to really have a bad crash to bend the chassis at that point with a gap that's only like 5mm, especially if you've got the top brace in. And they've already run it without a top brace and not had any problems. So all the parts you want are list And the front drive shaft, what I'd done was, let me see if I can find something. Let's say, for instance, this is your drive shaft. What I've done is I've measured inside the cup. Well, I fitted it at full length, and then I measured between the end of the CVD to where it slots into the drive cup, and I said, right, that's X amount, that's how long I need it to be. So say it's that long, I've chopped an even lump out the middle, so I've got the same length either end. And what I've done is sanded all the drive shaft, filed some flat spots on it, and because I didn't have a steel tube that would sleeve it nicely and I hadn't got a decent welder, I found that copper brake lining off a car sleeved it. So that's all I had at the time, and it didn't snugly sleeve it, to be fair. Ideally you wanted to go and buy some copper, maybe drill it, copper rod and drill it out. But either way, I had the two flat spots up. Put the copper tube on. The copper tube, I drilled the holes bigger in either end so the solder could, and I've soldered it. So I soldered it down, solder run down in it either way, where I've drilled it out bigger. And I had holes drilled in the top to drop solder down onto the flat spots. So I've done a tube of copper, slided it on there, soldered it all up, and this has been run a lot. And I've not had any problems with the copper drive shaft. I'll try and see if you can see it down in there. See that copper bit? Where is that? Yeah, it's there. If I can, there, right on the end of that. So that's the copper sleeve over the drive shaft. There you go, just below the steering servo arm there. Anyways, so the car, although it's a bit lighter than the WR10, even with the carbon chassis on it, that's still a heavy car. But this with the plastic dust cover on it, so what I've done, this is a proper lash up, one of my lash ups as usual. I've done that to keep the dirt from going in where the battery lead comes out, so I can unplug it with the cover still on. That's for the lights, for my lights on the body. Vents, we've got a vent there which is above the ESC. These are just little, I had some material off a tent door, so I cut it up and I've just super glued it on over the hole, stop the dirt getting in. That one's for the battery lead, the back there. These, what was it I found? Doing these little bits of tape, Gorilla tape on this, stop dirt getting in. And I've done some little upstands on the front as well there, which will massively stop the dirt getting in, to be fair. Because with the cover on, I still got dirt in here and it damaged the spur. Now you can see the spur, you know, it's a bit damaged, but what I've done is that all the parts for these are amazingly cheap. It's unbelievable, and the tunability, when this come out, I thought, oh man, that's great, because you've got all the hinge pins, you can adjust all the hinge pins, they're all cammed. The buggy, this is the buggy anti-roll bars that goes on. I've put a front bumper on the rear. You do have to butcher it though, because it's designed to be fitted to the front, and this bracket here is supposed to have a screw hole in it there, which should line up with that screw hole there, but none of it lines up. But it's given me that, you know, extra bumper on the back, which is great. The mud guards are great, stops all the filth getting in the body. But it was more a video about how that centre diff goes in. So you're all you don't necessarily have to order these plastic parts and the carbon bits there for the front and rear. You could argue by making your own top brace and not having them in, it would be sufficient with just the top brace. It does add up, the price of it, does add up a bit. But with this, when you order the diff, you get 2 different size spurs. And in fact, the smaller spur, which gives you higher speed, is still bigger than the stock spur that you get on it when the motor's at the back. So it still brings the gearing down. Plus, you're unlimited quite a bit here. You've now got 2 different size spurs, and you can do more different size pinions. The motor mount I thought was brilliant, how that adjusted as well. It's got a plate that locks, you bolt it to the motor, and you can slide it to and fro, but if you twist it, it comes out without undoing any bolts, only the tensioner bolt that locks it up. So I like that. Just trying to think of anything else. So it's all been done with the buggy parts, and really don't know what that is. Oh, that's the front brace. So the front brace actually comes along and it goes underneath. It goes right in between the 2 posts. So there are your 2 posts on the front diff brace or diff mounting. So that post comes through there and it bolts on through there, and it just misses the spur gear. So you know, it's all braced up nicely. Driven it, thought it was brilliant, loving it. Not even tried tuning it particularly yet. I've done a little thing where I've turned the steering rack up the other way. This plate here, I turned it up the other way because I was finding that there was too much angle on the arms, and the car, I found that when you come into a corner, I wasn't getting a lot of turning, but when you looked at the arms, as you'd come off the throttle, the arms went nearly level, which therefore when they're level, they're going to toe in or head towards towing in, aren't they, when the arms are at their maximum length when they're level. And then when you went back on the gas, it made the car tow out. So you understeered on the way in and oversteered on the way out. So it was struggling to turn in, and then when you left the corner, it was erratic. That's how I found it for me. Turning the rack over, moved the angle of the arms, therefore changing what the steering was doing and when it was doing it. So that was handy. But the biggest advantage of the centre diff is that tunability of gearing, I think. And also, you've got a diff as well. And I've got something I'm going to do to the diff. The WR8's got a special part fitted in it that someone else designed. Really, I only know of one person that's designed it. And I think it's brilliant. I'm not going to say too much, but it's... so I'm going to make a part for my one that fits in the diff that's going to make the car hopefully even better. It's certainly, I run it in mid WR10 diff. Yeah, but there you go, really. That's as much as I can really show you with all this stuff here. It's not going to be one of them beautiful videos. You can just sort of see that you've had to drill this. That's the first thing, is get the parts, put it all together as in the diff, and get this motor mount. You put the shafts in. So I got the motor mount built up and the diff built up, and I fitted the shafts. Then when I fitted the shafts, I put the rear shaft at full length and put the diff on them and that lot on front of it, and then I marked around and what I used was this carbon top plate I sat it square, because the edge of your metal chassis is square. I took a 90 off the chassis and I worked out where these 2 holes were, done a line across of the centre of the holes going that way, and then what that enabled me to do was try and centralise this, which you can't do too much because you've got to allow for the battery and that, and also the servo gets in the way a little bit, so you have to be slightly over. But you have a set square off the edge this side of the chassis, draw your line across to where it's going to fall when it's on that rear drive shaft, and then all you do is drop this carbon plate over that straight line, centralise it and line the line up, and then you can mark your 2 front holes and your 2 rear holes, and then you drill them holes. And I think, is there a third? No, there's not. That's one I've put in there, but I've also, what I've done is, because I've got this ESC here with the wires, I made a stainless steel, got a bit of stainless steel and bent it into an L bracket, and I've bolted it down, so if that pinion comes loose, it's not going to chomp into all my wires, because I wanted to cram the ESC up the front. I could have put it at the back, but I wanted the weight up the front. So there we go. Just to try and balance the car. Definitely worth doing, because of, I would say the biggest reason is the optional gearing for me. People may say, oh, I don't know why you bothered, it works fine, blah, 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 blah. I don't know, but for me, I have driven one that someone's done without the centre diff, and he has set it, drove amazingly well, to be fair. But the part that I'm going to fit in the centre diff is going to give me a driving style that I want, so having that in there and the tunability of it all is great. So that's about all I can share with you in the video. If you want to leave comments or ask any questions, I'll try and answer them in the comments. Love the car. It's brilliant, really pleased. You couldn't ask for more, could you? It had the mud guards on it, the roll bars you can get, all the parts are cheap. Tell you what, out of all the cars, this car, when for a drop test, whenever first time I see this car, I see it jump, it flew through the air, and when it landed, it landed and it was settled instantly. So the shocks on these, I would quite happily be able to buy these shocks and fit them. I have seen Obsema ones that look very similar, and they're quite cheap. I was thinking of buying some of them and seeing how much, whether they perform the same. But the way it jumps and lands is just amazing. It's really good. So great car. Really pleased with all of what they've done. When I first see it come out, I was like, oh, this just what was needed. Metal chassis, mud guards, dirt cover, and it was all there, and the parts are just cheap as chips. Unbelievable. And all that tunability as well. It comes with CVDs on as well, doesn't it? Front and rear. That's just crazy. It's a really good car. I mean, obviously there's loads of good cars out there, but yeah, brilliant. I'll leave it at that, and I'll add a photo of the list of parts. Oh, actually, there is one last thing quickly before I go. What have we got? A friend of mine's got one, and if you ask, I'll get him to join in the comments, but I'll show you what he's made. Right, so he's 3D printed. Obviously, I think this was already on the 3D place, but a fan cover you can put on to draw the air in. But I haven't run it because I want to try and keep any dirt out. I could have meshed that, but then I'd have to unplug that every time I wanted to take the cover off, so probably won't run that. I may not run these bits, depends how I get on with dirt getting in the spur and pinion. He printed one of these for the roll bars. He's given me one of them. That's for the anti-roll bar bit. It would bolt on, I'm presuming, I don't know quite where he's done that for. I think that's what it's for. It may have been yeah, it would have gone on the back. It would have gone on the back like that, I presume. So he's 3D printed one of them. Let's try and show you these bits. I'll try and put them together. So this is all guesswork, crikey. I can't believe he's managed to 3D print all this. Crazy. So designing it all, you know. That's a top piece, isn't it? That's fallen off. Oh, look, it slots in like that and goes on like that, and then you've got your bolt hole. You've got to drill some holes, I believe, to bolt it together. That's where it would go. You'd put a thread into that. That goes on there, like so. Bear in mind, this looks a bit, it moves about a bit. There's a gap under here because your carbon plate obviously goes under that. That goes up here for the front. Not quite sure which way it goes round, but that's it there. And there's your front brace, like that. Goes round that way. And when you look at this end, you say, oh right, there's holes in it. But that's where your metalwork of your front diff mount is. So it's all boxed in. I think it literally pushes in from this side, or it drops down in there and pushes out that way. And that's he's allowed that to lift the diff up so the spur don't rub. So he's done all that. This side you end up with a gap. You won't, because the motor mount will be in it. So that is your rear brace. Hang on a second, did he bother doing a front brace? I'm not sure. That's not for that, is it? Surely it might be. So there's, yeah, that's the rear part there. It goes together like that. That sits on there. That'll sit on there. So I'll add him. Well, I'll get him to comment on the video. So if anyone wants to give him a shout about these parts, it saves you buying, I suppose, if you want the carbon part. Obviously he must not have run this front brace because he hasn't made one up, or he already had it. But that's the top brace, and obviously you have to drill holes to bolt it together there. And there's your steering. That's your body mount for your dust cover, and there's the two front ones that go on the diff. So he's made all that up, so you can now get, I don't know whether he's sharing the files or whether you will purchase them off of him. I don't know, but that would save you getting them other bits. So I just thought I'd share that with you, and hopefully I've got all this on video and you guys can see it clear enough. But yeah, there you go. That's the LC Racing ptg2r with a centre diff. Have a good day, see you all later.